Good morning. My name is Shejini, JS on the school teacher. I'm so happy to be with you today on this episode of Adult Sunday School. Our lesson today is titled Pressing On Forward for Christ from the book of Philippians chapter 3 from verse 7 right down to 21. Our memory verse will focus on Philippians chapter 3 verse 13 and 14. By the end of this lesson, we are going to learn Paul's requirement or tool on how to press on forward um, for Christ in the spiritual race. Like we learned last Sunday or last episode, Paul was writing to the Christians of Philippi, and he wrote to them about having one mind in Christ because it is presumed that there was some disunity in the church, and so he was encouraging them to have one mind, to be in one mind, and to have the mind of Christ and the thinking of Christ, where you do not regard only things about yourself, but you sacrifice yourself to serve other people, and you do not walk with self-interest in mind. This time around, he begins Philippians chapter 3 by addressing the Judaizers or the Jewish religious leaders who were perverting the gospel by calling them dogs. He called them dogs because these were people who did not understand the gospel of Jesus Christ, and they kept derailing they kept deceiving the Gentile believers that for them to get righteous, for them to be saved, they need to obey the Jewish laws. And so Paul was not happy with this attitude, so he had to address them in strong words, telling them that they should not pervert the gospel. And one way he did it was making the Gentile believers to understand that he himself had been a Jewish leader, he himself had been a rabbi, he himself had been a Pharisee, and he is a Jew, a born Jew from the descendant of Benjamin. So Paul enumerates his portfolio in Philippians chapter 3 when you look at verse 4 to 6, and then after explaining to them that he himself had been in that position, but from the moment he met Christ, you can see that in verse 7, everything changed. He considers everything a loss. I will read in verse 7, he says, "But whatever was to my profit, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ. What is more, I consider everything a loss compared to the surpassing greatness of knowing Christ." So Apostle Paul is teaching us a powerful lesson here, that from the moment he met Christ and from the moment he knew Christ, every status he had, every advantage, every power he had, he considered them a loss because of the surpassing greatness of knowing Christ. So the lesson we can learn from here is that what goal or what focus or what achievement have you made in life? Sometimes this achievement can blind us to lose focus. And so Paul is telling them that I have all of that, but I have considered all of them lost. So your focus should be Jesus Christ. You have to know Jesus Christ and press on forward. In fact, he called those things in verse 8 rubbish. He calls them garbage in some versions. So don't think that your personal status, or because you started the church, or because you know most about the church, or because you are an elite in the church, or because you have all the degrees or whatever. Paul says, I have all of them, that I consider them a loss from the moment I know Christ. So the question is, ask yourself, do I really know Christ? It's a very important question. He goes ahead in verse 9 to address the issue of righteousness, where he speaks about two kinds of righteousness. He says some people are righteous because they think that they can obey the law. That is what the Judaizers were doing. And the real or the true righteousness is when you have faith in Christ. You are saved by grace and you have faith in Christ. Very important. They are different. People who try to please God by doing what is right or try to obey the commandments are tempted to be the type that consider Christianity to be a burden. But Christianity is not supposed to be a burden, it's supposed to be a blessing. And how will it be a blessing? If you know who Christ is. And the next question is, how do you know Christ? How do you get into a deep relationship or intimacy with Christ? Paul addresses that in verse 10 and 11. And what I want you to know is that when you know or you understand the power of Christ's resurrection and you share in his suffering, you develop a new life which has power and victory over sin. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode. If you did like this video, you should share it with your friends, share it with other Sunday school teachers, subscribe and like. If you look below the YouTube video, you will see a precise lesson plan that will help you to teach a student-based approach lesson. One of the things I'm trying to encourage Sunday school teachers is to ensure that your lessons are not just teacher centered, where you stand and you deliver a lecture to the students for them to listen. It doesn't make them engaged, it doesn't make the lesson interesting. So what you need to do is use a student-based approach where you allow them to communicate, read their Bible, and raise the answers by themselves before you come in to facilitate. So the lesson plan, I'm going to attach it to this video on a PDF file on WhatsApp or Word. So if you do not have PDF or Word in your phone, what you can do is check below the YouTube video. I will attach the lesson plan of this lesson there so that it can